with.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good.
Hey,
Hi there.
Elise.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing great. Thank you for the really awesome session so far. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks for coming. We're glad to have you here.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's a pleasure. Happy
I'm
to be able
still-
to see.
Well, and I'm still roping you in for storytelling. So we just have been one or two things to organize. So
A couple things on your plate, understandable. Let me know however I can help. I'm happy to do it.
yeah, I mean, Helen and I have some, well, Helen has really more good ideas than me because she's been doing some work with, well, I mean, you can say more, Helen. I mean, digital branding and identity development and things like that. And so we had some ideas about how we could pair up the sessions and things. So I think it'd be fun.
Oh, that's super fun. Yeah, I love that. So creative.
Great. Yeah, really looking forward to learning more about what you're doing, Elise. And Robin, so great to have you with us and everything. I know you and I met a while ago, and so
yes, we have.
Reconnect.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, nice to see you again.
Yes.
And I'm really looking forward. I don't know if you all know, but Robin's got this great, learning about technology in this moment, Mooc. And so I think, so I mean, I've registered, so I'm looking forward to finding some time to actually go and learn.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I'm hoping that, I've always had, the ideas. Actually, when Helen and I first met, I think was a workshop and talking about the planning stages of what the project is now.
Right.
And so it uses portfolios quite a bit. And it's still, it's a great project, but I still think many minds like the ones that are here right now can help it even become much better than it is.
So this was in a planning stage before the whole pandemic and things.
It's been actually, the project is maybe on about 8 years. We've got it in different formats. So back when I taught for the library school at University of Buffalo, I had done a modified version of this project with my students in a hybrid environment. And it worked out really well. And I can't even claim the original conception of this idea. Back, there was a social goal setting environment called 23 Things.
Oh.
And that's kind of what it was modeled after. And so after I used it with my students, mainly it's self-discovery, finding technology tools in a kind of a social community setting, and then creating a blog post. Now it's a portfolio post page to share what you've learned and how that tool will help you meet your needs. We had that in place for SUNY faculty for a bunch of years. And in the past 2 years, we've expanded it to be a Mooc to hit the needs of learners of all varieties, faculty and students. And that's a challenge in itself, just to get them to work together.
Totally. But I mean, how timely now. I mean, it was, it's sort of like, I thought, wow, they've put this together really expeditiously for this particular moment. I was going to grill you about how that was possible because
long time in the works, and it's still, the continual improvement on everything, including that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're so glad to have you all here. We had a few other people register, and I mean, maybe people will just kind of drop in and network, but maybe we could just take a minute and, have everybody introduce themselves. So just so we all know each other and a little bit about what you're doing on your campus. And if you've got any burning questions about AAEEBL or things that we can be thinking about. And I mean, then we'll happily share some of our secrets about what might be coming up in the rest of the month. So Kevin, why don't we start with you? We always love to throw you right out there in front of everybody.
If I were on mute, I would say that, oh, wait, I'm not. Hi, everybody. Kevin Kelly. I teach classes at San Francisco State University. I'm on the AAEEBL board. What more can I say? I ask my students to use e-portfolios. I've been doing this for a while. I'm having fun. And I like cannoli.
Why don't we, on my screen anyway, it's going to the left. So Robin, how about for you next?
Okay, so I'm Robin Sullivan. If you have to find me at UB, you have to use Roberta. That's the legal name. So I usually see me with a couple on the screen all the time. I'm a teaching and learning strategist. Mainly, I'm an instructional designer. I'm kind of new into the libraries. I was in our teaching and learning center for many, many years before that. But the project has kind of expanded beyond a faculty reach, which is one of the reasons why I've moved into the libraries.
Awesome. Well, welcome.
You know, I help with instructional design through the university, through all the schools, and definitely through the instructional information literacy sessions through the libraries.
That's awesome. I mean, it's so nice to have you know, people like you in these meetings. You know, often we get faculty, and, you know, I know certainly in my own context and when I've worked with other campuses, you know, getting the instructional designers and the learning technologists at the table is such an important thing, because you all know what to do, you know, like, you know how to take these different approaches and really embed them effectively into different contexts. So yeah, really glad to see more people like you at our meetings. So welcome.
Thank you.
Elise, am I saying it correctly?
You know, I love that you ask. Everyone always asks, and I actually don't know the answers, so I have to say my name I'm like, oh, I don't know. I say Elise. Yeah, Elise. I will respond to all of it, actually.
I remember that when we were having a meeting a couple weeks ago, Eliza got thrown out there, and I was like, well, that's not how I would have pronounced that.
I'm just so thankful that someone's talking to me that I'll respond to most things. So I'm like, oh yeah, that's me. So hi, I'm Elise Hellum. I am the ePortfolio Program Manager at the University of Puget Sound. But I'm actually relatively new in that role. I've been here about 2 years. And my previous experience actually was in K-12 education. I taught math and science for 12 years at both the middle school and high school levels, but with lots of technology. I used to have my middle schoolers do ePortfolios, but like on a different platform. So I like fell into this role of like helping work with faculty members to help them come up with ideas and technology strategies for their classroom, which has been a dream. It's been amazing.
Oh, it's so great to have somebody who's been in the K-12 sector doing this kind of work. I mean, it's one of the conversations we often have. And in fact, when we were planning to be in Salt Lake, the idea was to reach out to teachers, to invite them to, you know, from the local communities, to invite them to come and start sharing, because we know there's lots of people like you who are either doing this or who are really interested in it. And so great for Puget Sound to also get a teacher helping the faculty.
I love it. It's a fun role.
Well, we're glad to have you here. Hey, Helen, tell us all about all your wild and wonderful things that you're doing.
Well, so hi, everyone. My name is Helen Chen. I'm a research scientist in the Designing Education Lab at Stanford, and actually in the Department of Mechanical Engineering, even though I'm not an engineer by training. My interest in e-portfolios have evolved over the years that I've been working in them, and many years working with Tracy as well as with Kevin. And so we've really had the opportunity and the privilege to see how e-portfolios have really evolved. And I think now is especially an exciting time. My current work right now is actually in partnership with colleagues over in Stanford Career Education. There we have housed or established a lab called the Integrative Learning Portfolio Lab, really trying to look at really empowering students to be able to tell the story. So Elise, hopefully you and I will have a chance to talk more, tell the story about their education, their experience, and doing it in a more holistic, integrative way. I'm especially excited about that because it really has branched out into sort of discussions about personal branding, cultivating your professional digital presence. And one of my colleagues from the lab, who is actually now, used to be at Stanford, is now working at LinkedIn, has really helped us sort of expand that into new ways. But we really what we bring to it really are the fundamental portfolio principles, particularly around this idea of you know, the process that it takes in terms of really understanding yourself, understanding the story that you want to communicate. And we just happen to do it to an audience that students, you know, happen to be very interested in, which is, of course, the employer audience, as well as grad schools and so on. At Stanford, we teach courses, workshops, and hold other sort of like, you know, talks and programs that are focused on, you know, cultivating your professional and digital presence, all the way from, you know, again, thinking about portfolios to thinking about LinkedIn, and really sort of everything in between. We're hoping to be able to do more with faculty around, you know, thinking about portfolios, particularly within their courses as aligned with their learning outcomes.
Awesome. Wow. I mean, just such great work. I mean, Helen and I first met, we always keep trying to remember, like, when
Right.
was that? But we bonded over food and TV shows that we like, e-portfolios, of course.
That's
and,
right.
you know, who was going to leave the tip and figure that out.
Yeah, exactly.
And then at a conference, we were at the last American Association of Higher Education conference, which was in Atlanta, and we'd gone out. And then when we got to the reception at the conference, they had Bananas Foster and like the fanciest food we'd ever seen at a conference ever. We were like, wow, this is the place to be. And then unfortunately, AAEEBL went away, and we realized, oh, I think they were spending the last of the money in their coffers on really great, lovely Haagen-Dazs and things like that for us. So
Yeah.
kind of fun how you see, you know, an ebb and flow of these different organizations. And
Yes.
yeah, but a lot of the people that have been involved in AAEEBL and ePortfolios were all also part of that community. So we've really benefited from having those connections, you know, with others. And I'm Tracy, you probably know, obviously I work with AAEEBL, but in my day job, I'm the director of the Leadership and Excellence in Academic Development Division, or LEAD, at St. George's University in Grenada, West Indies. And unfortunately, I'm not in Grenada right now. I'm in British Columbia, but happy to be home with my family, but definitely missing island life and my colleagues there. It's a really unique context, primarily a medical school, but also we have veterinary medicine, a School of Arts and Science, and then a School of Graduate Studies. And, but just kind of a really cool context with lots of faculty who've just chosen to go and live on an island and work with students. And so really innovative and creative folks, and definitely been, you know, really privileged to get to see all the different innovations that they've, you know, really rapidly put in place to deal with this shifting context, and, you know, getting them to think about portfolio practices and pedagogies and kind of infusing that in. And that's really fun. And previously you know, I'm a historian, so I've been a history professor. I've been in interdisciplinary programs, run teaching and learning centers. So kind of done a lot of the kind of work that you all do in different contexts. So it's nice to be able to bring all of those ideas to the table, but also always learning. I'm just so fascinated by all the amazing thinking that's happening in our, you know, very privileged spaces where we get to kind of have these conversations. So it's a real honor to get to work with everybody at AAEEBL. So we're glad you're here. Do any of you did you come with questions or ideas in mind? I mean, we'd love to hear if you've got things that you would really hope to see over the month, you know, needs that you have or that your colleagues have on your campuses.
I think I'd love to find some people that might be interested to, I guess, help bring the MTech MOOC idea a little bit further along on its path. You know, it definitely could use some minds like those that are on the screen right now to kind of put the missing pieces that are there. You know, we're doing a lot of reflection, but maybe not as deep as I'd like. And it's kind of hard because of the vast audience that's in there, you know, college age students, faculty, and then we say, and anybody else. So, you know, we don't want to make it too intense because it is something that people are doing voluntarily. It's not something that they're getting a college degree for. So I think that's the one thing I'd like to do is how can I get a little deeper thought from the reflections that people are adding to their portfolio pages. I don't know if that.
Yeah, no, that's really great. I mean, I feel like there's going to be a lot of people in this space who are really interested in the work that you're doing, and we can certainly promote it and do. How many users have you or people have you got enrolled at the moment?
Well, it's a MOOC, so
Yep. So shifts and
there's
changes.
I think we have about 14,000 that have enrolled in 2 years.
Wow.
Wow.
So, but that doesn't, the completers were about 400 or 500.
Yeah,
Okay.
but still, that's pretty significant when you think about the numbers, and, because I think so many people enroll in things with good intentions and then,
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
or take a long time to finish.
And
Or
I
they
think,
have different goals. And I think that's
yes,
the key
yeah.
thing about MOOCs, and especially the open part of the,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the O or the U, but a lot of people, like I went to that one of the very first ones on artificial intelligence, not expecting to get a certificate in designing AI interfaces, but to learn a little bit more, see a couple resources, and know where I could go if I had questions later. And so I think the challenge with MOOCs is incentivizing people to complete either small chunks like a module or whatever unit you break it into, or the whole certificate or whatever you're providing them at the end, and kind of what I call lighting up the runway or painting a picture they can see themselves in, whatever metaphor you want. That's the struggle we have, even with online courses, because when I started teaching my online class with 150 students, I felt it was a lot like a MOOC with a big drop off by week 3 and, high, what they call DFW rates. And I was like, they're telling me we're shoving as many students as we can in this class, but you're responsible in keeping them there. And if you're not going to get to teach it anymore, even though the students who take it are saying that it's like my class, if you don't know, is called How to Learn with Your Mobile Device. And so I'm teaching students how to become better learners and then how to use the technology in their pockets to do it. So, but I had to work really hard over 2 years to get that, so that 80% of the students stay in the class and finish with a passing grade. Usually most of them get an A because I have created a crazy game-like atmosphere. But for MOOCs, I think that's the challenge that we face, is people go in with this idea that, well, I could finish, I could not. It's like,
yeah, that's for sure. And the project also has 2 components to it. So I think there's the other part that's not the structured course is a wiki collection of freely available tools. So that's something that I think that can be provided to this community, I think, as a good resource. Right now we have about 30 different tools that can be used as a portfolio that are in there. And I'm certain that with all of the people that have been working with portfolios, many more tools can be added to that. And in addition, there's been a partnership with Digication. So anybody that goes through the MOOC can also have a free Digication account. Doesn't come with the back end assessment management piece, but that is something that's really valuable.
That's really cool. Elise?
I mean, I just like to listen to what everyone else is doing. I mean, like I said, I'm 2 years into this ePortfolio journey at Puget Sound, and Puget Sound's journey is actually only about 2.5 years old as an institution using ePortfolio. So I guess maybe the big thing that I have my ears open for is, I think, Helen, what you were talking about earlier today, and Kevin as well, about like, whose objectives are you trying to meet? And there was that sort of scaffolded space. And I work a lot with faculty members at the course level. So for faculty members who want to do ePortfolios in a course, I feel like we've got a pretty good system as far as helping with that. But I am my eyes on the students and kind of their question of, well, so what do I do with this after I'm done with this ePortfolio for a course? And trying to build a journey that will make sense from, as you said, from when they start as first year students, as they move through their different experiences, getting ready to graduate and head into that professional sphere. And so what they're building along the way, I want to make sure that that's a tool that continues to be valuable to them as they leave. But recognizing that I only kind of control like this little tiny piece of what's happening at our institution. So I love to hear stories of people as how they have created partnerships around campus. Like what does that comprehensive journey from kind of beginning to end look like for first year students through graduates and even into alumni. So that's kind of something that's on my mind, just very timely, because we're kind of switching I've done 2 years worth of rolling out ePortfolio with first year students. So this is going to be my first group of students are now going to be juniors and then seniors. So they're getting ready to kind of have the eye on what do I do next. So I want to make sure that the tools that I'm building, the resources I'm using, meet the learning objectives of a course and potentially even of an institution, but also that they serve the needs of the students. Those things kind of don't always seem to coincide. So I don't know. That's something that's on my mind as far as ePortfolios and where we're going next. And so I love to hear all the ideas, though. It's really exciting to see what people are doing with it, because there's such a variety of outlets, which are really, really cool.
So Lisa, I've had some conversations with Renee, and I'm curious. I know that your portfolio initiative is within this the broader umbrella of experiential learning, and it seems to be touching upon many of the high impact practices at Puget Sound and so on. I wonder if you might speak a little bit more about that in terms of how the e-portfolios either facilitate greater meaning or benefit from specific high impact practices, or what's that integrative learning sort of component as you see students moving through the trajectory at Puget Sound.
Absolutely. So, I mean, ePortfolios, we took that idea. I can't remember who said it earlier this morning about this starting small approach. So we started actually using ePortfolios with a handful of faculty members that were really interested, but really pairing it with our internship program. We have an internship program aimed at sophomore students. We call it the Reflective Immersive Sophomore Experience, because we want students to get an early career experience, whether it be volunteering, work, internship, a project, and we require an ePortfolio with that internship piece. And actually, we've had some beautiful ePortfolios come out of that, where they tell the story of what that experience was, they document field notes, and they sort of share a showcase around that one experience. And so kind of building off of that, we've worked with faculty members who go study abroad. I just launched a program this summer with all students engaged in summer research, where they participate in a learning community that meets 5 times over the course of the summer, and they develop kind of a 2-page portfolio, one that has field notes over the course of the summer, and then one showcase page, which is like, why is research valuable? Not just what did my project yield, but like, why was this a valuable experience to me as a person? How does it connect to my academics, and how does it set me up for where I want to go, whether my next step is research or some other outlet. So in different spaces, I've been building these like 1-page templates, so that in theory, a student can take a 1-page from an internship, 1 page from their research, 1 page from a course, 1 page from volunteering, and kind of weave it together into a more comprehensive narrative of, this is what my journey has been, and these are the different elements that have been a part of my time here at Puget Sound. So we've made a lot of strategic partnerships with some of those high impact practices, as you said, and then find spots in courses where that can also kind of punctuate some of those ePortfolio narratives and have a slice. Is that kind of what you meant, Helen?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, and that certainly helps. And I guess one question is, like, as they're creating that showcase page, like, who's the audience?
Well, and so the shift from pages along the way to the showcase is that's where there's not really a comprehensive program, right? That's something we hope students will do, but at this moment, there's no requirement for students to build a portfolio. It's like an invitation. So if they do take one of the career development courses, so we have our Career and Employment Services has a couple of courses, and sort of there's one course there where they do build a showcase portfolio that's like a professional showcase. So I do have some examples where students have taken pages and woven that into that comprehensive piece. But and then there's certain departments like French or occupational therapy, where the students are required to do an e-portfolio kind of comprehensive story. But it's sort of piecemeal, right? It's sort of an opt-in.
Right.
And so kind of making a more comprehensive shift. That's what I'm looking for. Like I have amazing partners. I work with fantastic faculty, but how do we sort of have this feel a little bit more coherent for the students, not just who do you happen to have as a professor along the way. So that's where my brain is sort of processing and brainstorming.
Yeah. I mean, so Robin, like, you know, in terms of your use of portfolios, is it, I mean, who, you know, students are building it as they go through the MOOC, but then, you know, who do you envision as the audience for those portfolios as well?
I kind of think it's often individual use, but then they would be able to use it to show somebody that I have experimented with these emerging technologies. It's kind of the put your toe in the water step. You know, once they, you know, create a few artifacts, hopefully they're able to say, oh, look, I've done, you know, 4 different technology tools that I've explored and I've talked about them, and now I realize that it's not so intimidating to go find new tools and you know, search by what my objectives are to find something that will meet those needs. And we talk a lot about lifelong learning, you know, how technology changes so often. You know, you're not here to learn a specific tool, you're here to just kind of realize how easy it is to go find a tool that will help you meet your needs. But then when they're done, hopefully they'll be able to, you know, show an employer, you know, that they apply it to their own purposes. You know, if I'm an accountant, I'm going to create something using tools that show skills that I have in that area. Whatever the case might be. But it was actually designed, Penny, I think, or Tracy, I'm sorry, you were at UB once when we first started our.
I was gonna say, yeah, I feel like maybe we met when I visited
I was out of town at that point, unfortunately.
Okay.
I wanted to be there, but I think I did listen to the recording afterwards, which is nice. So the University of Buffalo, just a few years back, did take a big step and design what they call the UB curriculum. Fancy word for the gen ed curriculum that's got the UB stamp of approval on it. And every student that comes through the doors of UB as a freshman is required now to build an integrative portfolio. So the project that I'm involved with was designed with that in mind, to try to you know, get the students, okay, here is the, you know, the gentle nudge into the world of e-portfolios. Faculty, look, you can design one too. It's not just for students, and having them learn together. So it was hopefully going to support the UB curriculum process and e-portfolios, and it does to a certain extent, but not as entwined as I would like it to be. Yeah, so a lot of, it was hopefully going to build a culture of faculty that valued e-portfolios for the sake of, you know, what they are able to do. And we still have many faculty, way too many, that say, yes, this is the thing that I have to do for that UB curriculum. And so it trickles down to the students, and I'd like to try to change some of that attitude.
Yeah, that, I mean, I always feel like that the whole idea of doing it right, or, you know, when done well, portfolios are great when done well, really does rely so much on the faculty actually embodying the same kind of thinking and modeling that for the students, so that, you know, I think, like you were saying, at least if you happen to get a faculty member who's really keen on this and inspires you, then you might be more likely to carry it on. But again, I think that whole idea of an integrated experience, which the UB curriculum really does work to kind of foster, it has to happen throughout their university career and then beyond. And, you know, helping them to think about, you know, where are those moments where they could bring together those experiences? And wouldn't it be nice if we had faculty members who just, whether they're using portfolios or not, ask the question, you know, where else are you learning? You know, how are you connecting what we're doing in this context to stuff that's happening beyond? Because, you know, the students will do that. But I feel like if it's a one-off, like I think you were, are both sort of suggesting, then it's hard for it to stick, and because of course we all need practice in developing these abilities. So I don't know if Helen, you all are cracking that nut in terms of the work you're doing around digital identities or not, but I feel like it might be a really good start at least.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Kevin, I was thinking about your class. I mean, and what the similarities or what, how they might relate. Before I turn over to Kevin, I mean, Robin, I remember last year we actually had some folks from Buffalo. I'll go and just, Tracy, can you let me share my screen real quick and stuff?
Sure.
Because when you talked about the curriculum, we had at last year's conference at Bronx, some of your colleagues present here. So I guess Jeffrey Kohler, kind of talk. This is our graphical takeaway, which made me think of so. I'm glad it worked. Actually, I was able to easily find it and so on about the portfolio pedagogy in the in your curriculum capstone. So it's great to hear about where the connections might be. But yeah, would love to kind of ask Kevin, because it seems like in terms of exploring tools and so on, it seems like it just really reminded me of your class as Robin was talking.
So the class that I have constructed is pretty much a primer on how to become a more metacognitive learner. And because it's a general ed course, I had to go through some hoops. And if you can imagine the requirement that students are able to describe themselves as physiological, psychological, and social beings. It was like, whew. But because it's in education, I said, okay, I'm going to translate that for students. And how does our body affect our learning? How does our mind affect our learning? How does our network of friends, relatives, and classmates affect our learning? That made it easier for me to describe to them and engage them in activities. But what we do is we look at particular concepts. I've simplified the metacognition cycle just to be plan, do, reflect, plan, do, reflect. And that planning cycle often involves some sort of self-assessment. So like if we're talking about growth mindset, then they will go through the growth mindset thing, but then they'll explore the ancillary, or I would even better say complementary theories around growth mindset. Like if you've heard of J. Luke Wood from San Diego State, he pushes back against the concept of talking about people's abilities, because students of color often aren't told that we believe they have the ability to succeed. And so he respects the construct of focusing on praising effort, but wants to make us think about the different audiences. And this is similarly in India, Kundu, if you've heard of him, he's at NYU. He's got a book coming out about student agency, but he's done some research, especially in other countries, about how socioeconomic factors can affect student motivation, because they may have to go back to work or something like that and not pursue their studies. And so, long story short, students engage in these different, self-assessment activities. They learn about different things, and then I ask them to apply it in their own life. And so, and when it's related to their bodies, like I had one student come to the realization that sleeping 8 hours a day instead of 4 hours a day, she was able to pay attention in class and focus and finish her work on time. And then she ended her reflection with, I can't wait for another teacher to assign me to do this. I'm like, what? Oh, no. So throughout the class, we break things down into small chunks, and I usually do 3 separate chunks at a time, so they have some choice following Universal Design for Learning model. But then they go through this process of learning about something, discussing it with their colleagues, and then trying something out and reflecting on how it went. And then at the end of the course, they have kind of a meta reflection about please share the evidence you feel best represents you're meeting the different learning outcomes for the course. So I've given them a bunch of different activities, but they get to pick what they think is the best representation. And then I have them answer some higher level reflection questions on how do you project you'll use these skills in the future in school and the workforce, and what technologies did you explore that you think you'll continue using? Which ones were fun but you don't think you'll ever use again? And and so, because I have them exploring things like using games for learning, or the word research has come up a couple times. The concept of using Digo for social ways to share research resources and things like that. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, Helen, but that's
it does.
okay.
Well, and it makes me think about too, the importance of having students at the table. Like, I feel like this conversation we're having is about what we can do to them or with them or whatever for them. And maybe, shifting the conversation, and maybe you've done this a little bit on your campuses, Robin and Elise, about, what would empower them, like hearing from them. And one of the things that, to kind of keep up this, it makes me think of out of practice for students, just how do we engage them in continuing this work? And one of the conversations we've been having at the AAEEBL board table is around how do we better engage students in AAEEBL, and how do we, get them involved? And it makes me wonder whether we need a little student-led project where students tell us what it would take to get them to kind of embody and continue to practice portfolio beyond one course or beyond, a program, or, into their work life, whatever it might be. So I don't know, just that maybe that's a crazy idea, but it's definitely something we've been thinking about at AAEEBL.
Yeah, I heard you mention that having students be more a part of it, because I remember the first AAEEBL conference that I went to, there was some student presenters, and I think one of the students may have asked, why aren't there more students here participating in this? And I have a student who's working with me this summer, and I mentioned to her that this is happening online, and I said, I don't know if you'd be interested. I don't know if this is for you, but you would really enjoy it, I think. So we were having this conversation of, well, so should she register for some of these meetings? But we weren't sure. So we sort of had a conversation about it. But I think at least there's some students that we work with in our office, because exactly what you're saying, Tracy, student voice is so important. And we have students developing programs for us, because we feel like their agency and their ownership of those efforts is really, really critical to the success. And as much as possible, I have students training students on ePortfolio, so that way they can say, well, in my ePortfolio or in my experience, and even this last year, we have a workshop every January. We had 2 students from our office present about what do we say to students when we talk about ePortfolio. So they presented to faculty, but what they say when they're talking to students about ePortfolio, which was really cool. So I think their voices at the table is really, really important.
Yeah.
So
you go ahead, Helen.
No, I was just going to say, so along those lines, so we have over in the D School this University Innovation Fellows program, where it's designed on bringing in students and empowering them to be agents of change at their institutions. Particularly, that particular program started off with an interest around entrepreneurship, learning space, kind of coming up with new kinds of learning spaces and so on. But the idea of, what if it was something like, faculty, instructors, staff could nominate a student to become part of this sort of special fellows program at AAEEBL. And then there could be some, we could plan some sort of programming or something along those lines, trying to kind of, so that it wouldn't necessarily be even though there are a lot of great students out there, but if there was some kind of institutional kind of recognition, being nominated for this, and then, some also institutional support. So there's a context in which students are operating. I think exactly what you described, Elise, in terms of the kinds of what your students are doing, those would be exactly the kinds of students we'd want to engage.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder whether Elise and Robin, if they had students, could, have them propose something for the Shark Tank, or work with them to propose something for the Shark Tank, or, to me, I feel like that would be really powerful to have students as part of those pitches, so that it's not just, again, us kind of designing to do stuff to them, but rather engaging them in
Right.
Yeah, I keep thinking, you know, one of the principles that we try to follow is social constructivist, you know, that this, the community of learners, I'm not teaching all thousands of these learners.
Mm-hmm.
The research that we've done in the earlier versions of the project is that the results are people learning from what other people are learning.
Yeah.
And we've had, you know, faculty fellows that we nominated, and now in the current project, we have people kind of graduate to the ranks of a mentor in the course, whether they're a faculty or a student, somebody that just shows interest in being able to help nurture other people along in the development of their portfolios. And I'm just wondering if there's any way to, you know, make any of those connections. Kevin, you mentioned earlier about, you know, can you gamify it? You know, we do have that you earn a digital badge as you go through each different module and produce it. Right now, I'm kind of even thinking about changing those module badges just because of the manual process that it's taking to get them issued to so many people. But you know, the idea of having the people that are learning, helping the other learners do it better is something that we definitely try to promote.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like, you know, whether it's sort of, I mean, in terms, if we're going to put this, some of this into, from like a research perspective, whether it's really communities of practice, like virtual communities of practice that you're building, that's certainly one area of literature. I think the other, certainly, I think across what we've discussed today, you know, the idea of transfer of learning. So John Bransford, how people learn, you know, transferring from one context to another. Is there something about, you know, again, our work at Stanford has really been focused on students, and this maybe relates to the evidence of learning sort of meetup recording that we'll be sharing next week that Kevin and I, together with Gail Matthews and Natalie from Northeastern, worked on. As students are generating this evidence of what they're doing, at least what you're doing in terms of their, you know, the showcase part, or, you know, these summaries of what they're doing and so on. And they're doing it for one purpose. And Robin, the same thing in terms of creating these portfolios for the purposes of the course to document their own growth and development and so on. But then what components of that could they take and then translate for a different audience? They're probably not going to just give the same showcase page that they created, you know, and just sort of say, you know, show it to an employer, but how do you reframe it? How do you, you know, what do you, if you were to go back and look at it, what do you learn from it? Like in terms about your own skills, your development, you know, what you can do that you could then, let's say, talk about in a job interview, put onto a LinkedIn profile. Like, is there something about, you know, having participated in this MOOC, and I really sort of ascribe to what, you know, what Kevin said earlier, that it's not so much, obviously the success of your initiative is not so much based on just the number of people who completed the certificate. That's obviously not it. I mean, the fact that so many people found something compelling about it to even start it, what's the more granular way of measuring or demonstrating the impact that you've had on these, you know, thousands of people? And then even though they may not finish it, did they get something out of it that they could then take and then, you know, be able to share with somebody else, put it on their LinkedIn profile, you know, be able to kind of articulate or expand upon? Does it become the seed for something bigger?
Yeah, we definitely are trying to do research on it. The qualitative research was, you know, very enlightening. We've been collecting surveys from the start. You know, having a few graduate students trying to put together some pictures about what's happening, but you know, definitely needs to be made into a better story than what we have right now. Of, you know, what people are getting at it.
Well, it seems like there's definitely something there. You don't get numbers like that by just sort of, you know, putting it up on the web, you know, kind of thing. So
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, one thing, you know, the Coursera platform, I think, is very much responsible for the broad numbers, the reach that they have, but at the same time, it's restricting in many ways.
Right.
You know, just, you know, the communication channel, the first version we had with faculty was run through a Google Plus community. And that was great. It was a social network, and faculty could, just paste in a simple link of their artifact, and then the visuals would display and the link to their original work would display, and they can, hit the +1 button, and the Coursera discussion forums leave a lot to be desired.
Oh man.
So we've tried to move a little bit into, you have the choice of posting either into the discussions or through the Facebook page that we've launched. That's slowly starting to take hold. And I think I do see people are, sharing that, who's the audience, their Facebook group is
right.
And their LinkedIn pages that they're sharing their, their badges and so on.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fun to think about all the possibilities. I mean, you've definitely given us some really good food for thought in terms of what we can do to kind of bring some of these issues and ideas to the broader community, so that we can kind of work together. I mean, it's almost like a crowdsourcing, kind of a thing where we can all collaborate and kind of work together. I see Kevin has to head off, but it was great to have you here, of course, Kevin. So thanks so much for joining.
Thank you for your work on HighFlex too. We're following that. So.
Oh, good. If you haven't seen it, I put together a sample of what HighFlex course outlines can look like.
The syllabus template, the schedule like?
It's 50 or 75-minute outlines of what it's kind of what it looks like in the 3 different paths. Have you seen it already?
Yep, got that. And that's part of our resource we're sharing with our faculty, pulling that together. And
there we go.
Share that often, yeah.
Well, good. I look forward to seeing you all over the whole month. We're going to get to be good friends.
Yes.
I love the timeline.
And I think all of us were at all of the activities today. So
we win the prize. Are there other things, I mean, just as we're kind of thinking about opportunities for AAEEBL to kind of be maybe not more, but responsive to the community in different kinds of ways, are there other things that you've thought about? You've been, gee, if only AAEEBL had X or Y.
Maybe just we don't hear enough from AAEEBL. For a while there, it was really active, and I love the month's timeline. I think that's great, and I know it's hard. So, yeah, don't have answers.
It's such a fine line. What just out of interest, what rate of information would you like to receive from AAEEBL? Because I think we've been trying to mediate for a little while. We had, sometimes 2 and 3 posts a day, which even for those of us on the board, we were like, really, am I getting this another message today? So we didn't want to spam people. But at the same time, you're quite right. In the more recent past, it has been a little less frequent. And so what do you think that sweet spot is?
It's hard to say. The good stuff, however many times that comes out.
I mean, I will say that I've really appreciated the events that y'all have put together in this season of making things accessible remotely. So while I love the conferences, I think Helen, I saw the evidence webinar that you're referring to. I went to that, and that was what, 2 months ago, 3 months ago.
That's right.
And I thought that was great.
Yep.
I thought it was really well attended and really active, and I walked away from that so energized, just from what y'all shared, but then also the really energetic conversation that was happening in the chat. And so I feel like those really meaningful moments to kind of rejuvenate, reconnect, and whereas I think maybe the webinar outlet might not have been as desirable in past, webinars to hopefully lead us in between face-to-face moments are a really great way to sort of stay connected and feel like you're part of a community. So I know for me that was really valuable. Your question, Tracy, about timing, once a month is like a really like sweet spot. Like if I miss a month, I know one's coming next month, but I'm not doing it every week. So I don't know, even if it's not a webinar each month, but a something like when the journal comes out, and then a really significant article, or, you know, set of, you know, resources that are become available. Like, I don't know, like that to me would be a nice amount, because I feel like I get a lot of communication from AAC and U to the point where like I get too much. And so that's on the high end. About once a month is a good amount for me for like big moments. So it would be my thought.
Yeah, I think you're so right about the, you know, the ongoing thread and connection to the community. You know, like you said, if I can't make it this month, I know that there'll be something that I can connect with next month. And we've been, for the last year or so, maybe 2 years even, Helen, just, you know, thinking about, you know, what's the frequency, what is that sweet spot in terms of, you know, how many things do we need to do between meetings to kind of keep people energized and that sort of stuff. The other thing that we've been talking about for a long time, and we haven't yet been all that successful, although it's becoming more so, is really engaging the community. It doesn't need to be us. I mean, you're all out on the front lines doing this great work. So really wanting to find opportunities for community members to contribute and to do some of this work, I think is really important, because there's so many great stories. And that's where we've been trying to, you know, in May we did ePortfolios Australia. You know, we tried to bring in ePortfolio Ireland a little more to this event and beyond, because there's, you know, we have a really close friend and colleague who's in Japan. We're like, okay, we got to connect with him. And because we know we have some colleagues there who are doing interesting work. I know there's neat stuff happening in South America. So just kind of trying to better connect that broader community, because we all can learn from one another. And those different perspectives are really, you know, fantastic to have at the table.
I think sharing stories in that way, like just like what's happening on your campus. Like it might not be a cure-all for all ePortfolio questions ever, but oh, that's an interesting approach, or oh, I love that you're doing it that way. I know it sounds like most of y'all are connected with Digication in some way, and they were doing like their faculty scholars series, which was interesting because it was just a spotlight on like one institution and one story. And it was kind of a nice, like, oh, like I hadn't thought about doing it that way. That was really kind of a creative way, again, just to kind of get that the creative juices flowing. So, you know, so that it's not always you core able folks like doing all the content. I saw a lot of you doing lots of presentations today, and I was like, wow, that's a big lift. So
well, that's just this week. I mean, don't worry, you're not going to be stuck with us for a whole month.
It was great. No, it was great, but my poor heart was going, oh my word, they're really busy. So.
Your mention about using the students, you know, can you somehow recruit some of the best portfolios that have been created and ask those students to present? And I think just within these past 3 months, the webinar scene has become much more embraced by everybody. And so, you know, people that probably never in their mind thought that they would be on a webinar would be much more easily convinced to say, hey, we saw your portfolio and we think that, you know, a 10-minute spot on what you thought as you were developing it would be beneficial.
Yeah, and I think, you know, sort of getting people that recognition for the work that they're doing, because I think oftentimes, you know, whether it's individual students or individual faculty members, it can sometimes feel a little bit like you're out on, you know, a limb by yourself, and so, you know, recognizing and you know, rewarding, for lack of a better word, but, you know, like we can certainly write letters for people and you know, thank them for doing making their contributions and things. And as you were speaking about stories, it made me think about, yeah, we should have like kind of like the NPR. And I think I've shared with you at least that we started a Center for Research on Storytelling and Education at St. George's. And we actually have a big Spencer Foundation grant to run an event that we're sort of like, I wonder what that will look like in the midst of a pandemic. But so we've been kind of thinking about how can we, you know, sort of leverage that work. And then it's such a natural fit to portfolios and digital storytelling. So I think there could be some really, so maybe we can like suck you all into. We have it recorded now, so you know, we can't get out of it. Who was it? Robin and Elise.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. I think no, Tracy is pretty smart.
If you speak, you know. I always laugh when you're in meetings and no one speaks up. It's like everyone knows if I say anything, I'm gonna, you know, be implicated in this somehow. These are great ideas. I think we'll definitely work hard to kind of put them into action. And Helen, as I mentioned earlier today, is our new director of memberships. She spoke and had a great idea. We're like, there you are. It's all for you. So I know she's got some really great creative ideas that we're planning to release at some point through the month. So there'll be more reasons to tune in.
Wonderful. Great. Well, thank you all so much for the conversation and just for a really lovely day of, you know, getting connected and with what's happening in ePortfolios and with other people. It's been amazing.
Yes.
Oh, well, we're so glad to connect.
It's definitely worth, you know, I appreciate everything that you do to keep this organization going and sharing all the information. And this event is really good, and all the other events that you offer too.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad to have you as part of the community, and we can't wait to see you online over the next month in different ways. And yeah, thank you so much for spending your day with us today.
Thank you.
Great. So we'll see you soon then. Thanks so much.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.